Welcome into First Take. Thank you so much for hanging with us. Full house today. We got Jeff Saturday here, Stephen A. Smith,
long time.
Kellerman.
Yeah, how you doing,
brother? Boy.
Good to see you.
How y'all doing?
I'm good.
You good? You good? Let's roll. Let's do this.
We ready to get into this or what?
I'm always ready. I don't have a problem being ready.
You always
I really,
do.
really
Never
don't have
forget
a
about
problem.
Max. All right,
You know what I'm
let's get into it.
All
About last night, Monday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers became the first quarterback to throw for 300 yards against the Eagles. And the Packers snap a 4-game losing streak, defeating Philly 27-13. Stephen A., from what you saw last night, is your boy back?
Back. No, he's not back. You know why? Because where the hell did he go? I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out. All of this stuff about where did he go?
He was gone.
Listen. Couple of bad games, suspect games, or what have you. I kept trying to tell y'all, man, bag of shells, no big deal. Why am I saying that? Because it really wasn't about Aaron Rodgers. It was about Jordy Nelson, who hasn't been the same since his injury. It's about Randall Cobb, your slot receiver, even though he's good. We also understand he could be better. About Devontae Adams coming on strong and reminding everybody of what his capability is. It's about Eddie Lacy, who was fat last year, got himself back into shape, but then last year, not this year, but got himself back into shape, but then got injured this year, what have you, not having a running back. It's about that porous defense, absolutely atrocious secondary due to Sam Shields primarily being injured. But having said all of that, let's pump the brakes just a touch here, just a touch. Because as I looked at the Eagles last night, I just want to say my condolences goes out to Jeffrey Lurie, the owner. I mean, he had a rough couple of years. Last year, he had to deal with the whole Chip Kelly thing. Right. This year, it's a bevy of injuries, and you got a rookie coach. You know, Peterson, you're challenging a call on a 2-yard pass. What the hell are you thinking? Talk about being a rookie coach. That's a problem. Aguilar, he was inactive. I wrote down the list here, Max, because there's a whole bunch of guys that were either injured, they were ill, or they were just inapt. I was reading for the Philadelphia Inquirer, New York Daily News, Philadelphia Inquirer, my former paper where I worked 17 years.
Aren't we about to ask what's the problem in Philly? You want to do that now?
I'm not going to do that now. I'm not going to do that now. I'll touch on that a little bit later. Good point. All I'm trying to say to you is this. Considering the injuries, the illnesses, and everything else, we can't really say that Aaron Rodgers, oh my Lord, what a performance. What I'm saying is 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on the season, completing 64% of his passes. Excuse me, this is what's considered bad when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. Let's just put that in perspective. Aaron Rodgers reminded people like you. Yeah, okay, I'm just messing with you because I know how you are about Tom Brady. I kind of confuse your thoughts about Brady and Aaron Rodgers. But I just want to get on you a little bit. I want to make it up. I want to make it up that you got a problem with Aaron Rodgers because you seem to have a problem. You got a problem with Breeze. You got a problem with Brady. I'm just assuming he's going to find a problem with Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron's a little younger.
You need to change your name to Stephen H. Smith.
H?
Hypocrite. Because a couple weeks ago, a week or two ago, we were asked about Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Is he elite? And I sat here and said, look, you got the 6th best QBR in the league. Every quarterback with a QBR over Aaron Rodgers was an MVP candidate. So had he slipped from where he was? Yeah, a little bit. But he was still elite. And I recall you arguing with me about that. Now,
saying he wasn't elite? No, that's ridiculous.
He is now.
That's ridiculous.
He is now as the 4th best QBR in the league. But let's leave numbers alone or else you're going to accuse me of not using the eyeball test.
That's right. And we all know, look at those eyeballs. Look at those eyeballs, Jeff. He has to use those eyeballs.
That's how I look at the game, man. Eyeballs.
Here's the eyeball
test. You see those eyeballs on him? He's got to use them.
When you looked at Aaron Rodgers in the last year and a half, did that look like the Aaron Rodgers? No. It looked like at times a good quarterback, at times a quarterback who's not quite great. Had a couple of bad games mixed in there. Not Aaron Rodgers. Was that Aaron Rodgers last night? Yes, it was. Talk about Devontae Adams. How about that? I think it was second quarter, right? The touchdown throw. Listen, that pass was so beautifully thrown.
Unbelievable.
How many quarterbacks can make that throw?
Right.
He does that when he's going well. That's not a fluke. It's done intentionally. It's done consistently. 300 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and the eyeball test says that dude is back.
Listen, he was never a going. I understand the team has struggled, but being back means that you went somewhere. This was not all placed at Aaron Rodgers.
Just taking his side.
Right? The quarterback always gets too much credit for wins, too much blame for losses. They have 0 running game. it is difficult in the NFL when Montgomery is your leading carrier and your leading back. I understand he's big, he's all those things. He's not a running back. That's not what he does each and every down, right? He's been working on receiver. He's got all these kind of things. Starks was hurt. Lacey's hurt. Offensive line's banged up. They sitting off to Chicago. A lot of changes, a lot of moving parts. Lindsley was hurt. All the guys coming back. There was a lot of moving parts. The last 4 weeks before this, they'd given up 30 points twice, 40 points twice. That's not on Aaron Rodgers' side of the ball. That's a difficult thing to overcome. You pointed out, it's a great point. Jordy Nelson has struggled taking the top off of defenses, which we've expected. He's coming back from his injuries.
He'll be better next year.
He will definitely be better. He'll be better as this season progresses on. Cobby was struggling some, getting open inside, all the things that we talked about from him being a slot receiver. Adams, last night, I mean, he stepped. Listen, the ball was unbelievable. The catch was nasty. I mean, he is draped for that thing to hit you, and it was almost like you couldn't miss it. I mean, it was a thing of beauty that it happened, but you saw their defense, and I do agree this is a beat-up Eagles team. I don't think you can make, grandiose statements about the Packers where we are right now, but I will say, as far as Rodgers, he always plays with a chip on his shoulder. He never felt accepted, never felt loved, whatever you want to talk about, but at the end of the day, that edge, that kind of defiant attitude when he said, listen, we're going to go win 6 straight, whatever it is, his team is now beginning to rally. It will be interesting to see when he plays talent, a strong team, Seahawks, he'll have the Lions the last game of the season, what it looks like then.
Road, yeah.
But when he had to do it last night, he did it.
Couple of things. First of all, when we brought up Aaron Rodgers a couple of weeks ago, I have my own standards, not the mere mortals. I have my own standards.
Why do you look at me? Why do you look at us for mere mortals?
32 and 32 would take
That's
care.
right.
All right,
There's no question.
You just said,
I got
but your
my
argument
standards
today is
too,
he never
homie.
left.
He never left. But again, to me, that's according to your standards. I have my own. But we'll revisit that. Here's the deal. I wanted you to be in on this segment because you played with the Packers.
Yeah.
And one of the things we've talked about over the last couple of weeks was some of the stories emanating out of the Packers.
Yeah.
Defensively, Mike McCarthy, Ted Thompson was even thrown into the mix to the point where Murphy had to come out. The president had to come out and say, no changes are being made. We're disappointed, but no changes are being made. I want to know what you've made of all the talk about the Packers and their troubles in recent weeks prior to last night's game. What was your attitude going into last night's game?
Yeah, I think when you looked at them from an offensive perspective, when I would talk about them the last few weeks, they have no rhythm. Right? Like offenses are built on rhythm. 3-step, let the ball go, right? Receiver's going to get open. It seemed like everything was going back to backyard football. We're going to try to extend plays, which I know they practice because I did it, right? They have drills out there where the horn blows, and they want you to extend the play another 2 or 3 seconds. The issue with that is when teams back off and make you take check downs and make you throw the ball down and make you run it to earn it, they couldn't answer that call. So when you're playing out of rhythm, it makes Aaron Rodgers look mortal, to your point, because to put that ball in when defensive backs are breaking on the ball instead of playing backwards and backing up, it's difficult to do. You don't have the run.
I have a question about that for you. Football is not the kind of game where you can, over the long haul, impose your physical gifts one player and consistently decide the outcome of games. I get that. But every now and then a guy comes along. Michael Vick at his best in that first breakout season, RG3 in his rookie season, Cam, Aaron Rodgers over the course, I think, of a couple seasons.
Right.
And there are some others, maybe including Andrew Luck in maybe his second or third season, where I felt like a player is just deciding, quarterback usually, to take over the game and compensate for the weaknesses in other places. Aaron Rodgers yesterday looked like that guy to me. Even the 4.3 yards per carry on the ground through the air, it was like he decided, I'm not going to let anything happen here.
But here's what he did. He took what they gave him. They're playing man coverage behind it or 2-man behind.
And so he was on one leg. Are we forgetting that?
Yeah, the hammy gets tugged on. But he didn't try to force the ball. He was smart about what he was trying to do, especially early in the game. He wasn't trying to force it. He didn't play frustrated. And that's what I was going to get to you saw him play frustrated. And no team can do that. And then your defense is giving up a bunch of points. Everything kind of gets lumped in. And your point, I'd never heard anybody bash Ted Thompson. Everybody was getting thrown under the bus in Green Bay. And that's what happens when expectations are as high as they are on a football team. When you got guys in the locker room, here's what I would always say to a veteran guy. If you got an issue with the way we're playing, come in-house and let's talk about it. The last place I want to hear about it is from the press when I walk back in on Monday morning, or if I have a conference after you that night. I don't want to hear what you said and have to explain it. Everybody in their locker room started doing some of that. And you can't, at the end of the day, you got to get in-house and say, we're not accomplishing what we're supposed to be doing. Everybody's got a role. Everybody's got accountability and ownership. They got to take it up. But when you start going, hey, we don't got the energy. We don't have the effort. We don't, nah. Like,
I want to take it back to Rodgers for a second.
Because it will divide a locker room.
I want to take it back to Rodgers on the field for a second. What you're talking about, taking what the defense gives them, that's what, like, Tom Brady does better than anyone ever. That's what Dak is doing this year. Those are those mistake-proof kind of quarterbacks.
Sure.
I felt like Rodgers at his best was the best version of that in the sense that he had all the physical gifts to run and throw, and in addition to that, he made good decisions while still being aggressive, getting the ball into tight windows. That's the guy I saw that guy again yesterday.
Yeah, but the defense they're playing is when you're talking about him in his prime, he had a good running game. They could establish the run. They could go make those plays. Right now, he is playing, behind the eight ball. I mean, when you don't have a running game, you can't be as challenging as you're talking about because there's no recovery. You can't eat clock. You're going to have to throw the ball. You got to throw it short. He's getting pressure because he has to extend plays. He's going to take a shot. All of those things. When he's aggressive, he is definitely at his best, but it requires the other 5 skill guys to be in that same mindset. That's where your issue has been, is Adams just started showing up. I mean, everybody's going to jump on the bandwagon. Yeah, he's just started to show up, right? Cobb last year had issues. This year, it had a hard time getting the ball. Jordy, they expected him to just hit the ground running. We all know receivers, ACLs, it is tough to come back from that. Man, to get out of your break, to get over the top, all those things. And now think about it from a defense perspective. You're going to play it like that. I mean, you're going to be willing to take more chances, challenge those receivers, jam on the line, try to throw off the timing, and then you see Rodgers back there patting it. It doesn't matter how strong your arm is, doesn't matter how any of that stuff is. You got to be aggressive, but you also got to understand what you're playing with from a defensive perspective. And listen, I'm going to tell you right now, the Packers early in the season, had I thought their defense was going to play that good, I'd have said this team is a 13-win team. But now their defense has kind of come back to where I probably said they played good last night, but the weeks before, it's a struggle, right? I mean, that's where it is.
So things are looking positive. We saw the vintage bad man last night in Philly, but will Rodgers and the Packers run the table as predicted in their last 5 games? Go on Twitter now and vote. We'll share those results a little later in the show. But let's get to the other side of this matchup, gentlemen. Philly suffered its first home loss of the season after winning 3 straight. And now they've dropped 6 of their last 8. So the Eagles are now the only team in the NFC East with a losing record. Jeff, what's the problem down there in the city of brotherly love?
Boys are hurt. A lot of folks hurt. I mean, you look at this team and how they played early in the season. Wentz obviously has played very good football. Again, last night, played really good football. They don't have enough to get by a team like Green Bay. I mean, they're just not enough options, not enough things. Your running backs hurt, your line 3 or 5 linemen are down, your defensive backfield's being adjusted because people are hurt. Everything that could go wrong for the Eagles from an injury perspective has gone that way. And then you got you got one of your receivers who's benched and he's healthy. I mean,
Nelson Aguilar.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking for this guy to be the guy, and now he can't even go on the field. Those things are tough to overcome.
This is why it's a rare occasion. I can't believe I'm saying this. I actually disagree with Jeff Saturday. I'm sorry to break it down to you. You said injuries. No, personnel. That's what it is. The receivers can't play that much outside of Jordan Matthews. Jordan Matthews got hurt yesterday, got hurt in the second quarter, came back, tried to go in the third quarter, couldn't really do it. But what else do they have? If you look at Aguilar, he hasn't produced. What in God's name has happened to Zach Ertz and Brent Selleck? These are 2 tight ends. You got New England, people like that, 2 tight end systems. We know what they can do if you got those guys. We expected and anticipated that the Eagles were going to be able to utilize those dudes. They can't do it. Then you got guys that, you're talking about 5 different changes in your starting lineup. Aguilar was inactive.
Before you move on from the tight ends, let me just say this. Players don't forget how to play. They're not being featured, but those guys don't just stop knowing how to play. They're not featuring them, getting them the ball, making effort to get that.
So what are you trying to say, Jeff? I mean, are we saying that we miss Andy Reid? I mean, what are you saying here?
I'm saying it's a first-year coach. You've got to get used to what you have and how you're going to do it. Because if you look at what they have, players don't just, I understand the cliff. At some point, all players hit a cliff. but guys don't just stop playing. They have to be featured. They're trying to do different things. They're trying to get other things established. Maybe they're nervous about Wentz and the way he's going to put it. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. You can't just say
Wentz is the only guy I feel good about it.
Are you
He's
too quite done? Would
I feel
everyone
great
like
about
the
him.
answer? Would you like the answer? I can't believe I have to tell a great offensive lineman the answer
I
to
just
this
said
question.
3 of 5 down.
No,
Go ahead.
no. Before Lane Johnson started serving his suspension, this is a 3-1 team, and the quarterback had a QBR that ranked 17th in the league. That's between Russell Wilson and Kirk Cousins. Think that level quarterback.
You about
this
to
year.
say what I think you're gonna say?
When Lane Johnson went out, since then, they're 2-5. And his QBR,
stop it.
his
Both of you.
QBR,
Don't be nodding and
his
everything.
QBR. Hold on,
Stop
I love this.
His
I
QBR.
love
Oh
We
my
got
Lord!
media
This is
who's
unbelievable.
going
Go
inside
ahead,
the
finish, man.
numbers.
I can't believe you're gonna
His
say this.
QBR
I
went
can't
from
believe it.
17th to 31st. Now,
I gotta stand up
they
for this.
say
I gotta
Lane
stand
needs
up
a
for this.
raise.
I gotta
Get him a
say-
raise.
Go ahead.
now they
Go
say
ahead.
correlation is not causality. But damn it, that's a good correlation right
I
there.
gotta stand up for this.
I love
so let me
you.
get hold on.
I love you. This is unbelievable.
I
I've never heard a
I gotta
right
stand up for this.
tackle
I gotta
ever being
a
that's
right
so pretty.
tackle.
What happened?
I love it.
Really? This is unbelievable. So let me get this straight.
They are the third
Let me get
right
this straight.
tackle.
Hold on. Let me get this
Oh,
straight. Let me get this straight. The Eagles went from 3-1 to 5-6, from first place, pretty time for first place, to out of the picture in the NFC East because of one offensive lineman.
Lane Johnson.
You love this,
love
don't you?
that.
And
Y'all
I will-
got to be
and I
kidding
will
me.
tell you
Y'all
why.
need to
This is
stop.
my favorite
Y'all need
day
to
I've ever
stop.
been on this
An
show.
offensive
And I will-
lineman.
and I will-
Yup, big guys to love.
Unbelievable.
Yep, and I will tell you why. Because and by the way,
It's a setup.
the Eagles'
It's a
point
setup.
differential also
Really?
went from
Really?
first in the NFL to what is it?
Man, you can read all the damn numbers you want. Don't tell me no.
24th?
First of all, you
Now,
should be
how does
ashamed of
that
yourself.
happen?
You
I'm right now.
Now, why does that happen?
Go ahead,
Let
man.
him
Go
talk.
ahead, man.
Why does that happen?
Next,
Because
this
the
is
Eagles
messing with me.
put it together on offense early in the season with spit and bubble gum. And there was a tipping point with a rookie head coach and a rookie who was a quarterback and a rookie quarterback who they were starting. They weren't supposed to have a good season, and they caught lightning in a bottle
For sure.
because they could protect the quarterback and even block for the run just well enough that the other parts of the team, including the defense, were able to do their thing. And when they lost their best offensive lineman, second best offensive lineman,
Well, Kelsey's pretty good.
yeah,
too, man.
okay, whatever, top two. When they lost that guy, and everyone was looking. Let's not pretend that beforehand we weren't like, hey, Lane Johnson's got to serve that suspension. What's going to happen?
Right.
You know what happened? All hell broke loose. It was a tipping point for this team. Jeff Saturday.
I love
Malcolm
you.
Gladwell.
I've never heard
Y'all are
anybody-
shameful.
I have
Y'all got
never
together before this show.
heard
This
a
is
more
unbelievable.
articulate argument about offensive line play. If I had you as my agent, I would have made 3 times. I had a 3 multiplier with you putting that thing together for me. We can look at Maine's number one. I would
watch you
love
on
that.
NFL Live
That's
all the time.
beautiful.
I watch
That's
you on
beautiful.
NFL Live all the time in sports. I have never seen you as happy as I see you right now. So
I'm coming back to this show regularly now.
Let's just analyze this for our viewing audience here. So let me get this straight.
I'm with him.
We
I'm
got
with him.
Carson Wentz. We got Darren Sproles. We didn't have that Ryan Matthews last time. I'm just talking about overall the season. All right. We got the Jordan Matthews. All right. We got Jim Schwartz as a defensive coordinator. We got Malcolm Jenkins and Fletcher Cox and Carwin and the crew.
Hey,
we got all of these dudes.
Max's point, just guys.
Just guys. So let me get this straight. The Philadelphia Eagles, figuratively speaking, have fallen off the cliff. All right?
Yeah.
Because of one offensive lineman.
Big Lane.
This is what we're saying.
You know
This is what we're saying to the national audience right
the
here.
idea of the blind side, which became, the blind side was a
course.
big deal, and the movie and the whole thing.
Yeah.
In fact, when Casey Joyner, the football scientist, studied this, you know what he found? It's unless you're facing an elite defensive end, right end, the left tackle is a little bit overstated their importance. The most important thing is that you're strong throughout the line. And the problem is if you have a glaring weakness on the line, the defenses will attack that consistently. And when you go from a top guy to a sub-replacement guy, that's what happens.
And the quarterback.
I got him. Let me ask you a question.
I love this. This is a beautiful conversation.
And I just because I'm going someplace here, so don't give me a soliloquy. Just answer my question. Isn't it true that you have complained about the Giants' offensive line
Yes.
quite some time? Has that stopped Eli Manning? Has that stopped Eli Manning and
yes.
Odell Beckham Jr.?
Yes.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry. What's their record? What's their record? Have they been winning football
They'd be
games?
better with a better offensive line.
I'm not denying that they wouldn't be
And
better
a
with a
running
better
game.
offensive line. I am saying to you, we have
You
lamented.
give Wentz Odell Beckham Jr.
Wait a minute. We have
It would
lamented.
help.
By the way, I saw him last night. Told me to tell you what's up. The point is this: we sit up there, right? We have lamented Green Bay, New York, various other teams. We've raved about Dallas, Oakland, to a lesser degree Pittsburgh and the offensive line, but we've lamented on many occasions suspect offensive lines. Period. And you're telling me because of one dude at right tackle that makes a difference with you? Got to be kidding. You should be ashamed of yourself. You know, see, that's what it is. You're feeding the ego right there.
Well,
y'all collaborated for first. This is unbelievable. Y'all gonna say they was a straight no way. I know Lane Johnson's big time, but one right tackle.
I want to say something about this. This reminds me in all sports, defense wins championships. But when the 04 Pistons are rampaging through the playoffs and people see the Lakers, the Lakers are going to kill them. Do you believe it or not? If we believe that the offensive line, and I believe it is the foundation. Look at the Cowboys.
So do I. I didn't say offensive line. I didn't say offensive line. I said an offensive lineman.
Because that could be the tipping point
that makes guys move,
Listen, I understand that, but the point is
with a rookie quarterback,
it don't shift you from 3-1 to 5-6.
Apparently, it does.
The numbers don't lie.
Have you seen
Did you read the football scientist?
Forget it. No, I have not. Let me say this to you. Have you seen? Have you seen the Philadelphia Eagles secondary? Have you seen these two guys that they have? I mean, it's a Leotis, McKelvin, and Nolan Carroll. Did you see what happened to them last night? You got Malcolm Jenkins, who's your safety. He's your third quarterback in this situation. Right. You got this kid, Jalen Mills, that's coming off the bench. You're wondering what he's going to be able to do. And he actually did a better job than the dude started for you. There's no Lito Shepherd here. There's no Bobby Taylor here. There's no Troy Vincent here. The days of the Philadelphia Eagles elite secondary are over. What are y'all talking about?
Don't just throw that last night all on the DBs. That line, the defensive line didn't make getting to Aaron Rodgers.
Fletcher Cox didn't do that job either. I totally get it. I told Baldwin, Fletcher Cox,
try to go protect against
Graham and those boys. They didn't do their job. They didn't do their job.
You're not wrong about that. Of course, you're not wrong. You miss it. That's not the only thing. But if that's the difference, if that's the difference between 1 or 2 losses, even 1 loss, and all of a sudden you're 6-5 instead of 5-6, you still have a season.
All right.
Oh, my Lord.
He goes back last
end of the year, yeah.
Okay, let's bring it all
back. So Lane Johnson comes back.
We'll see.
Things will be so much better.
All right. So Pat says Aaron Rodgers is back. You guys said he never left. Jeff, thank you so much for being with us.
Bye, Jeff. Bye, Jeff.
All right, let's leave it there. You know who else never left? Russell Westbrook carrying the Thunder to a win over the Knicks with yet another triple-double. It's all he does, but how far can the rest best carry OKC this season? Find out that next. And with Dak Prescott taking control of the Cowboys offense, many have said Big D should trade Tony Romo. But former quarterback Joe Theismann says a buyer beware.
He's going to put up numbers because of his ability and just how hard he plays and his gifts.
Westbrook to the rim, he scores.
His ability to get to the rim is just impressive.
Westbrook for 3.
Russell Westbrook showing you those eagle eyes. He looking one way.
Cantor. Leslie off a beautiful feed by Rush. Westbrook is a rebound and an assist away from a triple-double here in the first half. Rose, the runner. No, won't fall. Thunder with the rebound. Quick pass ahead, Oladipo. On a beautiful pass by Westbrook, and that is Russell's 3rd consecutive triple-double. He got it in 19 minutes and 40 seconds.
That's ridiculous.
That's sick. It's sick.
I agree with you, partner. It just doesn't make sense. It's almost like video game numbers.
So nice. Russell Westbrook had another triple-double last night in a 112-103 win at Madison Square Garden. With his league-leading 8th triple-double of the season on Monday night, Westbrook is now averaging 1 for the season, 30.9 points, 10.3 rebounds, and 11.3 assists per game through 19 games. The only other person to average a triple-double this late in the season is one Oscar Robertson, who last did it in 63-64. Russell joining Magic Johnson and Robertson as the only players in NBA history to average a triple-double more than 5 games into a season. Robertson, yeah, he did it 3 times. Stephen A., how far can he take his team?
Second round of the playoffs. Western Conference. It's not his fault. This is a team that's the number 3 ranked offense in the NBA. This is a team that's number 1 in rebounding, number 3 overall in offensive rebounds, which means they get opportunities. And the last thing you need to do is give Russell Westbrook more opportunities. I was at the Garden last night, Max. I went to the game. Russell Westbrook is a superstar. This dude is electrifying in every way. And he is the greatest assassin in the game today. He is the most ruthless competitor that exists in the NBA. He will cut your neck to beat you. He will come all out 100 miles an hour all the time. He gives new meaning to the word aggression. He is just a bigger, more athletic version of Allen Iverson. I mean, this is that kind of dude. Unfortunately, the pieces around him are good enough to get to the postseason, but I don't think they're good enough to win the West. I think, obviously, the Golden State Warriors are standing in your way. I think the complete team that is the San Antonio Spurs, you have to give them the edge. I think the Clippers, to a lesser degree, you have to give them the edge, even though they're on a 2-game losing streak. The way that Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, particularly if Blake Griffin shows up, I think these are things that you can't ignore. Ultimately, Max, it just comes down to this. Oklahoma City is a good team. Billy Donovan can coach. Russell Westbrook is a superstar. Oladipo is no scrub. He can play. But you lost one of the top 3 players on the planet in Kevin Durant. You don't replace that with an Oladipo and think that you're going to be on the same level.
We also traded Ibaka.
That's right.
And by the way, can you...
To Orlando.
Here's the answer to the question. They can maybe win a playoff series if they finish with a good enough record. If they're in the top 4 and they play one of the bottom 4 teams, if they're in the bottom 4 and they have to play one of the top 4 teams, it better be the 4th team if that's the Rockets or something like that, right?
They would be the 4th.
Otherwise, they won't even win a playoff series. Right. And Westbrook is my favorite player. The way I describe him is if Kobe Bryant and Allen Iverson had a baby, you get Russell Westbrook. But players like that, Iverson, Kobe, Westbrook, are usually idolized out of proportion by fans, including me. Westbrook is my favorite because he's unbridled aggression. He wants it so bad, but I think he wants it too bad. And I think if he controlled some of that aggression a little more and didn't try to do too much, didn't try to carry too much of the burden of the team, he would be a better player. Of course, he would then not be my favorite player, probably. I mean, the reason I like him is because there's no brakes on him. But if he applied the brakes a little bit at times, and if he thought more, I think, of his teammates, then I think he would go farther. And I think the proof in the pudding is, I know it wasn't the same coach, and Brooks not as good a playoff coach, I would think, as Donovan. And I think you saw that in last year's playoffs. They made strides. But
it's not a knock against Brooks. It's just that Donovan's a really good coach.
And I know they were very young, but you're the point guard, and you had Durant and Ibaka and Harden and other interesting pieces, and you couldn't get it done with them for years, even without Harden. And you brought in other guys, and you still couldn't get it done with them. And let's be honest, frequently it was because in the 4th quarter, Westbrook tried to do a little too much. It's the reason I love him, and it's also the reason I don't think they can win more than one playoff series.
Well, you and I agree in terms of the one playoff series because I got them going to the semifinals at best.
Right.
Having said all of that, here's where I think your analogy is unfair to Russell Westbrook. All of those points you made were valid until last year. They had the Warriors up 3 down. They were up 3.
What happened?
Kevin Durant didn't show up in Game 6.
Neither did Westbrook.
I know
at the
that.
end.
Wait a minute. Here's the deal. Russell Westbrook, and this is just a philosophical difference between you and I. My definition of choking and not getting it done is when you do what you normally do until times get tight. Mm-hmm. And I got this saying, times get tight, palms get sweaty, backsides get tight. You understand what I'm saying? And certain cats just can't show up. I certainly don't think that's Kevin Durant, period. I'm just talking about that particular game. He was taking shots. Charles Barkley's analysis during that first half of Game 6 was spot on. Kevin Durant was taking ill-advised shots. He was jacking up shots he never did. Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith and the crew were literally like, yo, who the hell is this guy? We don't see that Kevin Durant.
Think
We've
about
never
what you're
seen
saying
him
about
before.
Westbrook then.
So, but Westbrook is just he's
always
perpetually
does
that way.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm saying.
But you
He
can
didn't-
offset that. I'm saying in that particular game.
If he pulled it back a little bit.
I'm saying in that particular game, this is my point. You're right. But in that particular game 6, they had him. They had that series. That's not on Westbrook.
Well,
that was a
Westbrook
series.
play well in the fourth quarter?
No, he
Yes
did
or
not.
no?
No, he didn't. Yeah, but that was but still in all, there were times when he hadn't played it well in the fourth quarter on many occasions.
But that was the time to put the foot on the throat.
But Kevin Durant was always there to offset it, and he picked that particular game where he did not. We can't ignore that.
Right.
We
so
can't
without
ignore
Durant now, so they used to have 2 elite top 5 players, and in fact, when Durant was coming back from injury, it was unclear who was better between Durant and Westbrook at a certain point.
Yes, right. I always knew Durant's
Westbrook
better.
you had seen fully the kind of player he could be in Durant's absence. But that player, full throttle, triple-double Westbrook, is probably not actually the best thing for the Thunder. I agree with you. Oladipo's good. But he's shooting like 40 from 3, and so I understand they may have a problem. He may not do that all season. It's really good. He may not do that all season. Maybe they don't have enough shooting and everything. I feel as though, and I've always felt this way about Westbrook, the thing that makes me love him, the unbridled aggression, is probably also the thing that's holding him back from being an even better player. Not in the counting numbers, but in the results of the game.
Yeah, but if you had trouble completely relinquishing to Kevin Durant, you damn sure it's recognized. It's easy to recognize that you damn sure ain't gonna do it for Oladipo or Steven Adams or Enes Kanter, who showed up last night. So we understand that, and the reason why I bring that up, Max, is because I harken back to my years of covering Allen Iverson. Larry Brown and these dudes knew what they had. And they said, look, we got to surround him with dudes who are satisfied doing everything else because this dude is going to shoot the basketball. So if you know this about Russell Westbrook, what are you putting around him? And when I look at Kevin Durant, again, you work with him. Kevin Durant is phenomenal, and we see what he's doing in Golden State. I told you he's one of the top 2 players in the world. But that game 6, you had an opportunity to close
I want to go back to that sentiment.
You had that
I want to
moment.
go back to that sentiment. So then what you're saying is, I believe, and I'll tell you why in a second, Westbrook can't win a championship. And I will tell you why. Because if you're saying you know what you got in Westbrook, so it depends what you put around him. Either you put other players who are so inferior to what you need to win that you can't win a championship, or if you put plenty around him, like Kevin Durant and others, there'll be a clash in terms of that stuff in the moment of truth, and they still can't win a championship.
But you're looking at it from this perspective about Russell Westbrook. I'm looking at the opposition. You can't win a championship with Russell Westbrook because Golden State is standing in the way, because of Cleveland is standing in the way, just like Kobe and Shaq were standing in the way of AI. But don't tell me that. But don't tell me. I understand that, but I'm saying I don't believe that Russell Westbrook's the reason they lost last year. Let me be very, very clear. Because I don't believe that.
Because he was.
I don't believe
because
that.
He tried to do too much in the fourth quarter, and since he always tries to do too much, that abdicates responsibility.
Because I saw Kevin Durant have the opportunity to close the deal, and he did it.
Neither did Westbrook.
Well, listen. What I'm saying to you is this: you're the penultimate dude. You're the supplementary piece. As great as Russell Westbrook is, he's the supplementary piece.
Right there. Wait,
Kevin Durant.
That's what I'm talking about. Westbrook can never be the supplementary piece because that's not his personality.
But I'm telling you,
that's why it didn't work.
I'm telling you, in that
and then
series.
The question is he good enough to be the best player in a
series? Again, if you're giving me the 8-9 years Russell Westbrook's been in the league, we both acknowledge that on numerous occasions. I am telling you, for that particular series, go back and watch each and every single game. That was Kevin Durant's series to take, and he did not do it. That is a fact. It cannot be disputed. I don't care. I don't care what anybody says.
This is my favorite player to watch that I'm talking about, and there's a lot of excuses why no matter what you can't win a championship.
I'm just saying you're right. Except for that series in the Western Conference Finals against the Golden State Warriors, which Kevin Durant has to go to now.
All right.
You got to handle that.
Gentlemen.
You know that.
Let's leave it there.
All right.
Speaking of rivalries and handling things, remember these comments from Josh Norman after his battle with Des Bryant on Thanksgiving.
This guy bumping to me like, what's up? Where I'm from, we in unload the clip, so pretty much whatever you want to do.
Meanwhile, Josh Norman and Des Bryant got into it both on and off the field as the Cowboys hosted the Redskins on Thanksgiving, and the trash talk, well, it continued post-game.
This guy bumping to me like, what's up? Where I'm from, we in unload the clip, so pretty much whatever you want to do. Not that guy that see a challenge from the face back down. That's not me. That's not what you're going to get. So I'm sorry if I offended anybody. Well, actually, I'm not sorry I offended nobody because I'm be me. That's who I am. Grass to the end. Like I said, I'm loading the clip all the way out to the end of the game. Don't matter what.
All right, he went Beyonce, sorry, not sorry. And then this. That was Thursday. Josh Norman confirming Des Bryant's quote twice. And then fast forward to Monday, where he's retracting those comments and telling the Washington Post that Bryant didn't actually say that. Des also expressed regret on Twitter for how he handled things. Will Kane in the house. How are you doing? Good to see you.
Good.
What's up, man?
Trash talk, Dallas Cowboys. You might as well call them my name.
Yeah, Mr. Cowboy.
But by the way, we've been
flesh.
on the Cowboys bandwagon for weeks now. I don't know where you've been.
I noticed that they've gone 10-1 and I haven't been here. I think the last time you invited me, they were 5-1. I can't help but think
Details.
Coincidence?
Yeah.
I
That's
will
right.
confess, it's hard to look at you right now.
I know.
With the Cowboys being 10-1. I'll
That's
admit
not the
it.
only reason it's hard.
I'll admit it. I mean, what would be the other reason?
Just jealousy. The jealousy you feel.
Stephen
With
A.
that shirt?
The jealousy
Okay.
you feel.
Speaking of hard to look at things, is it hard to look at Josh Norman right now? How does this make him look?
It's hard. It makes him look bad. And I don't say that with any pleasure because I've gotten to know Josh, and I think Josh is a good dude. He's got what I consider to be an appropriate chip on his shoulder, considering how he's climbed that ladder to success, being on a practice squad and working his way up. But what he said was inexcusable because, again, as I pointed out on Friday, Max, when they were talking smack to each other, and I mentioned this to Will as well, in this day and age with the violence that we're seeing all over the place, whether it's in the streets of Chicago to the University of Ohio State, you don't sit up there and go out with that kind of verbiage and, talking about, emptying the clip and all of that stuff. And he said that Des Bryant said that. And when asked by the reporters, he said twice, Des had said that. And then to retract it and has come back and say that Des did not say that. Well, you got to also take into account Dez's history. Des has been a model citizen pretty much for the last several years. But when he first came into the league, he was having some issues with his image. And so, saying something like this sort of provokes people to think about Des in that light. Had Des indeed said something like that, you start raising an eyebrow and you're thinking about him negatively. And why? Because y'all talking smack on the field. You're going to use that kind of analogy. That was my only issue. So I'm just going to sit up there and say it's unfortunate that he did that. It's unfortunate that he confessed that Des didn't say something like that, because even if Des had said it, it was something I felt he should have never revealed publicly to the media to begin with. But especially now that we know he did say it, why'd you do that?
I have a different take than that. I understand that take.
Sure.
And at first, Josh, why'd you say empty the clip? But if Josh Norman is speaking extemporaneously, just revealing the gist of what was said, and he uses a euphemism for leaving it all out on the field, and it's an inappropriate one given our day and age.
Sure.
And then when people say, did he say that? And he doubled down, then he made a mistake, right? But when it came out and they asked Des, he goes, no, I never said that. And it came back to Josh Norman. He stepped up and owned it and finally acted like an adult. At a certain point, you just got to say, okay, fine. I did it. My bad. What I want to focus on, so I'm not going to rake him over the coals.
I'm not raking him over the coals. I just said he looks bad.
And the reason and he could look a lot worse, but Des Bryant is not making him look worse. I don't know if you'll like this or not as a Cowboys fan.
He's not.
I have so much admiration for Des, the way he comports himself publicly. I know he's missed meetings and this and that, and he shows up late, and there's a problem sometimes, but the way he talks publicly when he addresses issues like this, given his background, the kind of teammate he is, he doesn't want to be a distraction. He doesn't even kill Josh Norman about it. He says, look, I don't have anything against the guy. I'm sure he doesn't have anything against me. It's over. He didn't kill him about it. Des took a couple days of bad publicity, a couple news cycles, including on this show. If Des Bryant said that, that's bad. And he doesn't look to get some grand apology or to really make Josh Norman pay. He lets him off the hook, puts it behind him, isn't a distraction to his team. And once again, in terms of what he says and how he addresses issues like this, I find Des Bryant's behavior to be exemplary in these kind of instances. And I have a lot of admiration for that guy.
All right, I'm going to go with both of you guys here. First of all, when it comes to Josh Norman, I do want to rake him over the coals on something, and I do want to defend him on something. First of all, I'm very well aware of the statistics in this country on crime rates, gun crime, specifically in the black community, in specifically places like Chicago as well. So I'm sensitive to that.
Right.
But I also don't think we have to look at somebody saying unload the clip and think A, he's contributing, or B, he's insensitive to all these facts. Gun euphemisms are part of our culture. We talk about guys being sharpshooters, dead-eye. We talk on this show about blowing a hole in somebody's argument. It's constant. And it's it's not bad. It's not negative. It's just part of what I think. In no way does that kind of language contribute to actual violence. Words like that do not lead us to actual violence. We can separate the two. And Josh using that kind of language, unload the clip, the media started hyperventilating about that entirely too quick.
I'll respond to that in a second. Go ahead.
Then to rake Josh over the coals, though, he played into that. He saw it almost immediately. Because when you hear that clip, I think it's pretty clear he was talking about himself. He said it twice, and the second time it was very clear he was talking about himself unloading the clip, not Des Bryant. So what he did, and this is the worst part, is then he lied. He just flat out lied, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Because the Washington Post reporter asked him to clarify. Did Des say that? Did Des say that? And twice he said, yeah, Des said that. That's a flat out lie. One Des called him out on. And look, Josh has proven to be a provocateur, an instigator on and off the field. He twisted Dez's leg during that game. He stepped on Dez's hand during that game. He was trying to provoke Des. And this is another example of that. And lying, in my mind, is just way, way over the line. Don't start making stuff up. Des clearly thought that as well.
My response to that is this. I appreciate your perspective. I hear where you're coming from. And I don't want to debate this part because I think it would be unfair to you guys to debate it per se. But as an African American, and a lot of African Americans get upset at me for bringing this up, the reality is clear. Regardless, I'm not questioning Josh Norman's intent. I'm quite sure that, he's not a public speaker, he's a football player. And we got to understand that. And he's speaking extemporaneously off the fly in the immediate aftermath of a game. We get all of that. But the reality is that when you walk out in the street, we talk about people being role models. Why do we say that? Because of the impact individuals, particularly professional athletes, have on young minds. So it's not about what you and I know to be true in terms of what you just said and what he meant and how it was interpreted. It's about how other folks out there might interpret it, what it's perceived in terms of what kind of impact it's perceived as having. And I think when you talk about the African American community, we have to be sensitive to what potentially impacts us from a detrimental perspective. On many occasions, I look at you, Max, and I talk about the numbers game. And I sit there and I remind people all the time, we make up 13% of the American population. The Latino community is 17% of the population. We're no longer even a dominant minority. When you talk about the incarceration rate, when you talk about the death rate and all of these different things, we attribute these things to a potpourri of circumstances. Those things can't be ignored. And so when you are out there communicating and conducting yourself in a certain way, there's an elevated level of sensitivity that somebody in my position and in Josh Norman's position and in Des positions and others that we have to harbor because of how things directly affect our community.
Yeah, I would
that's
say
what
this.
I'm doing.
In terms of sensitivity, I think people are way too sensitive about language.
I agree.
Generally.
I agree, but it's reality.
And I don't think these kind of words lead directly in a causal way to behavior. But they may have some kind of marginal impact on societal norms, right? If someone says unload the clip, and it kind of promotes this idea that guns are normal and this kind of behavior is normal in a very marginal kind of way that's very hard to measure. I basically agree with you, Will. It shouldn't be, should not start hyperventilating about it. But I also don't think Josh Norman lied quite. I think that was euphemistic language, as you're referring to. Look, we use this kind of language all the time. And then I think at a certain point, if I had to guess, he realized, oh, wait, are people hanging on to this language? Wait, who said that? And he was saying, the way I interpret it,
now comes the lie.
Maybe if you want to call this lie, he was saying that's the sentiment that Des Bryant expressed to me. And then when it became an issue on shows like this and other media outlets, and Des was like, time out, I never said anything about guns. At that point, Norman had to step forward and clear it up.
It's going to come off as I'm a fan, but I just want to agree with one thing you said. Man, it is hard not to like the way Des comports himself. He seems to be real, and real's not good enough. You better be really good if you're going to be real. But he's thinking out loud. You watch that interview he does with Ed Werder, and he's thinking out loud. He's like, I can't, and he's emotional. He's like, I can't move on. I want to stay on this for a second because Josh said X, Y, Z. And then Des did respond. But when he kind of calms down, he generally chooses the right path. And it's not the perception of Des. There's a perception of Des out there right now that I don't know that aligns with who he really is. And by the way, I'll give Josh some of the same credit. Josh was being emotional. Josh was letting it out.
That's what I said.
My only critique of Josh
not
is
acting,
not telling the truth.
But then he owned it. Eventually, he stepped up and owned it.
That's good. You're right.
Including for people like you saying he lied. He's like, okay, this is on me. And I 100% that Dez, his reputation from his point of view must be obnoxious because it is the opposite of who he shows himself to be, at least publicly.
My closing point is this. Neither of them are bad guys.
No.
That's not why we're having this debate. What we're discussing is the impact of their words and their actions.
Yep.
That means who you affect, not who you are. Josh Norman's a good dude. Des Bryant has proven to be a very good dude. Both of them are elite athletes in the ultimate level of the NFL. It's about the impact of the lives they potentially touch. That's why professional athletics is what it is today. It's not because of just you. It's because of the lives you touch. That's all I'm
And
saying.
Stephen A., to that point, clearly they thought they were in the wrong, and that's why they decided to squash it publicly, and it's done. Will, you are sticking with us, and we're sticking with your Cowboys. Tony Romo is finally healthy, but a former All-Pro quarterback says teams should absolutely not trade for the Cowboys' backup. Do these guys agree? You don't want to miss that topic next. And Alabama continues to roll the competition. So what is Nick Saban all fired up about in his weekly press conference?
All I know is if we play and we play well, we control our own destiny in terms of what we do. So I'd really rather not have any more questions about, is it okay to lose this game? It's never okay to lose a game.
Let's put this Tony Romo stuff to bed, okay?
Yeah.
The man's had 3 back surgeries. He's got a collarbone that's been broken twice. He's 36 years old. He plays behind, the last couple of years, he played behind probably the best offensive line in football. Hasn't finished the season in the last 5. Any general manager that would make a deal for Tony Romo shouldn't keep the job as a general manager. I mean, it's a bad business decision.
That was Joe Theismann telling Bleacher Report that any GM who trades for Tony Romo should be fired, calling it a bad business decision. Max? Is Theismann right?
Not only is he right, I have very little to add. It's not that Tony Romo isn't excellent, Will. I know he's an excellent quarterback, Stephen A. You underestimate him. He is an excellent quarterback when he's on the field.
In the regular season.
But his recent medical history indicates that he will never be on the field for an entire season. He won't make it through. He's actually best served as the backup on the Dallas Cowboys. He's best served as a guy on the bench who, if the starter is hurt, can come in and give you elite level quarterback play for a couple of games because he has chronic back conditions, plural. That means he will never make it through a season. So you can't game plan a season around him, and you can't chew up a big chunk of your salary cap on him. Theismann's 100% right.
What does chronic mean?
Over and over again over time.
Over and over again?
Yeah.
It's like the same thing happening over and over again?
Yeah.
And you generalized his back as one condition. His back.
Conditions.
The spine.
I said
going
plural.
from here to here,
Yes.
that's one thing.
The spine bones.
A lot of people don't know this, but
But
I'm going to tell you where it's going because a lot of people don't know this, but during the commercial break, Max was placing himself among the intellectual elites of the country, I believe, and I can't believe you would then go on the minute the cameras come on and align yourself with some of the most moronic comments I've heard in football the last year or so.
You actually placed me there unknowingly, but go ahead.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous by Joe Theismann. Joe Theismann was a great NFL quarterback. He has not proven to be a great GM, and he sure hasn't proven to be a medical doctor, nor has the intellectual Max Kellerman proven to be a medical doctor. Tony Romo has had the following injuries: pinky, collarbone, ruptured disc, transverse process. Yeah, in the back region, but different, right?
Oh, I see.
I mean,
because the backbone is not connected to the backbone,
a literally
right?
different
Or the
part of your
thigh
back.
bone.
Yeah.
Collarbone, and compression factor.
Yeah.
Those are not the same injuries. They're not recurring injuries like saying a degenerative knee or an ACL that keeps tearing. These are individual freak accidents. Now, if Tony...
Oh, come on, Will.
You can't say that with a straight face. Say it again with a straight face. Say it again with a straight face.
You don't even mean it.
I have never come on this show.
You don't even mean it. This is the first time for everything. This is your first time. You don't mean that.
And Will, I will say that statement certainly doesn't place you on the intellectual elites.
I mean it. I mean it. I would never come on this show. I have enough respect for not only this show, but the concept of debate to hold an opinion that I only think and feel.
I understand. I understand. Go ahead.
These injuries are not connected. These are not chronic.
Except by the back.
laugh. You laugh and it makes me laugh. That's why I'm smiling.
The backbone's connected to that. Go ahead, Will. I'm listening. Go ahead.
Tony Romo statistically has been one of the most dominant quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Quit laughing, Max. You're making it seem like I don't mean
By
this.
dominant, you mean injury-prone quarterback?
I mean a top 5 quarterback over the last decade. Most fourth quarter comebacks. Highest passer rating above active quarterbacks. The Denver Broncos, or if you want to go into the non-contender status, Chicago Bears or New York Jets would be very well off to trade for Tony Romo. There's a price to everything. And just because he's been hurt, I think it's only 3 of the last 4 seasons, doesn't mean he's
not a bad
Please put the camera on Will and say that again.
Max.
Wait, please put it on Will and just repeat that phrase. What was it? He's just because he's been hurt. What? How many times?
I'm going to rest my argument here. I will not be going to Max Kellerman or Joe Theismann for medical opinions on chronic things or what you call damaged goods. I will instead stick with Tony Romo.
First of all, nobody's accusing Joe Theismann of being a doctor, but he is a Super Bowl champion quarterback from the NFC East, which is something Tony Romo has never been, and we now know officially he will never be. And that's the reality of the situation. See, Will, where Max got lost in this argument, but I have not, is that the last time I saw you, we were talking about how Tony Romo was going to be inserted as the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, and how Tony Romo was going to lead them to the promised land, and how Jerry Jones was going to see to it, and how Dak Prescott...
So you're not going to talk about Theismann? You're going to talk about me?
No. That's what I'm talking about here. I'll let you speak. This is what we were talking about. And so what has happened is you're in quite a quandary here. Because on one hand, you love your Dallas Cowboys, and you love what you're seeing Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott and the crew do. On the other hand, the more they do it, the more it ensures your prognostication, how inept, how out there, how lost you were when it came to Tony Romo. So I understand. It's a troubling situation. You can think about it and come back next week and recover.
No, I'm here. I'm ready.
You're in no position to do it right now. Here's the deal. Tony Romo, for all the greatness that you talk about with him, that's regular season, 78-49 record, completing 65% of his passes. The brother's big time during the regular season. Come postseason, he has 2 playoff victories in 10 years. Will Kane, I know you know this. In order to win 1 Super Bowl, you actually have to win a minimum of 3 postseason games in the same season. This man hasn't won more than 2 in 10 years. It is over. And at the end of the day, what it comes down to is this, Will. You can make all the arguments that you want, but Joe Theismann, he ain't a doctor, but he is a quarterback. He did play in the NFC East. He has won a Super Bowl, and more importantly, he's had personal conversations with Tony Romo where he has suggested to Tony Romo that you should retire because of how risky it is. I've interviewed Joe Theismann. I know Joe Theismann. I've spoken to him on many occasions about this. This is not something that Tony Romo is reading about or hearing about on the news. He has looked Tony Romo in the face, and he has said, in the interest of you and your family, these injuries are no joke. And so in that regard, I will only answer it by saying this. Should somebody take Tony Romo? Hell no. Unless you could get him on the cheap so when he gets hurt, it doesn't affect you financially.
Put him on the bench.
That's it.
All right. Number 1.
Yeah.
Number 1. I don't need a week to form a rebuttal for you. I need 2 seconds. It happens live.
I know you think
as
that.
we're speaking. There's no week needed. I'm ready now.
Intellectual elite in the country.
I know you think
That's
that.
number
There we
1.
go.
That's number 1. Number 2, you haven't peeled back the curtain. You haven't showed anybody the predicament that I'm in that I've got to now argue my way out of with my Tony Romo opinion.
I actually think you did a good job on Mike, and I watched you, and at no time did you address your faux pas when it came to Tony Romo. You, as a matter of fact, avoided that subject religiously, if I recall correctly. Max, I just want you to know, he avoided the subject.
Which number 3 I will address now. I was not wrong.
Go ahead.
I was not wrong.
So you on the air for 4 hours, you ain't have time to address it then, but you here for a few minutes. You got time.
I say my good stuff for you.
Take your time.
I say my good stuff for you.
Go ahead.
Well, let me.
I'm going to put on the spotlight. I'm going to dance around in the spotlight.
You've been dancing out this morning.
I'm not trying to get in the darkness. I'm going to dance in the spotlight. Here it is. Tony Romo, I still predict, will play a pivotal role for the Dallas Cowboys before this season is over. Either injury or bad play will force Tony Romo onto the field. Dak Prescott is great. I'm so excited about Dak Prescott to be the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys for the next decade. He is playing at a level it's hard to imagine anyone else could play better. But I still know that rookie has never won the Super Bowl, and I still know that Tony Romo could be hitting Des Bryant on some of these routes he's burned Josh Norman on down the field. I think Tony Romo could be operating behind this offensive line on this team at a very, very high level.
I got a question.
And he will this season.
I got a question. am I to understand when you made the statement that no rookie quarterback has ever won a Super Bowl, you believe, even right now, that the return of Tony Romo would elevate the Cowboys' chances of winning a Super Bowl rather than leaving Dak Scott in the lineup?
I think it's 6 one way, half a dozen another.
Oh, Lord, what kind of damn answer is that? What's your answer?
I think the Dallas Cowboys can win the Super Bowl with Dak Prescott or Tony Romo.
So then what you sweating about Tony Romo for then? So what you sweating about Tony Romo for then? Why do you feel this compulsion? Why do you feel this need to get Tony Romo back in the lineup if Dak Prescott can win with it?
You're sweating a little bit.
You are sweating. We saw the makeup artists come over here and touch up a little bit. You're sweating a little bit. What's going on? I mean, Dak Prescott, you don't think can Dak Prescott win with the Cowboys?
Yes.
The Super Bowl?
So why are you worried? Why do you feel the need for Tony Romo? Because I believe Tony Romo
I didn't say I do.
As a matter of fact, I'm counting that. I hope your prediction is correct. Because to me, if Tony Romo gets back in the lineup, it ensures the Cowboys will win the Super Bowl. I hope it happens.
This is what I want to know. Hold on. This is what I want to know. Why do you need to be a doctor to know that if a guy misses 3 of the last 4 seasons, he's injury prone? It's like,
they're
did you need a doctor?
Injuries, Max. Don't you know they're not connected?
Did you need a doctor to tell you that Cal Ripken Jr. was a healthy guy?
Bad morning.
Did you need a doctor for that? If that's true,
right.
I'm completely lacking self-awareness because I feel pretty good about this.
Real good. Good. Let's leave it on that note. This was fun. Well, always good to see you.
I think I'm pretty self-aware, Molly.
You are,
but
a little lost right now.
Not this morning. A little lost. Bad morning for you.
Have you ever admitted defeat? Ever?
Say what?
Ever? Have you ever admitted defeat?
I've never had to.
He's lost.
I've never had to. It's just so obvious that it doesn't need to be said on this show.
It doesn't happen. That's why.
I rest my case.
He believes it. No awareness. Nick Saban goes off on a reporter during his weekly press conference. Don't miss the classic rant from Alabama's head coach. And Rob Gronkowski is forced to leave Sunday's Pats win with yet another injury. So will we ever see a dominant Gronk again?
Think about the playoffs, man. That's all you care about. You don't care about any bowl games. You don't care about any teams in the country that aren't in the playoffs. I don't know if we don't win this game. Maybe we throw a stink bomb out there. Maybe we don't get in the playoffs. I don't know. You guys got all the answers to all that, but I don't. All right. All I know is if we play and we play well, we control our own destiny in terms of what we do. So I'd really rather not have any more questions about, is it okay to lose this game? It's never okay to lose a game.
And I wanted to ask about Jalen. He's done.
You should have asked that first.
Is he not the best? That was Nick Saban responding to reporters, and the question which was asked was, would his players be okay losing the SEC title game to Florida? Because win or lose, they will probably make the college football playoff. Like, love, or hate this response, Stephen A.
Oh, I love the response. It doesn't bother me. I do concern myself with media members. Every question is not going to be great, but I firmly and adamantly believe you should not be scared to ask a question you deem necessary to ask. I think a lot of times, me personally, I think that's a sickness of mine, Max. I'll be the first to admit it. I'm quite sure it makes people uncomfortable for a coach or somebody to get at you. I crave the thought of a coach thinking they could come at me like that. I would love it. I'd have a bunch of questions.
Come back out.
Right back. Let's go. I don't work for you.
I need to see you at some press conferences.
You wouldn't, because I don't worry about stuff like that, because I'm going to go there to do my job, not to humiliate anybody or do anything. But I'm going to ask the questions that I think people want to know. I love it because I love Saban's realness. I love his commitment to excellence. I love the fact that he doesn't let players, his team, or anybody, his coach, just like he went off on Lane Kiffin on the sideline during the game earlier this year. He lets no one off the hook. He is about accountability, and I love that man for it. He's the greatest coach in college football. I think he's one of the greatest coaches ever. My problem, the only issue I have, Max, is with his words about, you guys, that's all you care about. Well, what the hell are you looking at the media for? That's the NCAA's decision. Whoever came up with the bowl system, the FBS and, the Power 5 conferences and all of this other stuff. It's like those folks in Alabama, let's call it what it is. The newspaper industry, the media industry overall has changed dramatically. So you talking to dudes, this is their livelihood. They ain't getting paid the $7 million he's getting paid. He's Alabama. Therefore, they walk in there, they tick him off. They might not get any access. You compromising their job. I love his realness. I love his commitment to excellence. I love all of those things about Nick Saban. But he does come across as a bully. And I would say this, Max, in closing. One of my proudest moments was seeing him with Paul Feinbaum on the sports, I think it was the Sports Center desk or wherever it was at the SEC Media Day. Paul Feinbaum asked him a question. Nick Saban came right back at him. Paul Feinbaum came right back at him.
Paul could not care less.
Paul can't care less. And more importantly, Paul is a dude who's a big-time radio host, an exceptional radio host, an exceptional information guy as well, who won't back down and don't have to worry about Nick Saban compromising. Now, I do respect Nick went right back at him because Nick is showing you that's just who Nick is. He ain't just picking on a little guy. It's just that sometimes I find myself wishing, like, damn, those are little guys. Could you give him some slack?
I love this, and I love the entire interaction. I love the question, and I love Nick Saban's response. And I will tell you why. It's not, the job here is not for the reporter to make himself look good, nor is the job for Nick Saban to make himself look good. What they're trying to create here is content for the consumer. Ideally, the kind of content that not only entertains, which this did, but illuminates the thought process of the coach. What makes him tick? How does he approach things? The reporter, the thrust of the question really was, given the fact that you're guaranteed a playoff berth by and large, how do you keep your guys motivated, right? Like, what do you do to keep them wanting to win? And Nick Saban gave an illuminating answer. It illuminated his thought process, his approach, his world view about his job, which is very Belichickian, right? And it makes sense off that tree. It's respect for the opponent, respect for the task at hand, respect for tradition, and that's why he is, and respect for the amount of work and focus he needs. And that's why he's the best coach maybe in the history of college football, because he has that same approach as Belichick. He can't entertain ideas of losing. What do you mean how I keep my guys motivated? Because let's face it, the playoff does undermine the conference championships. It does. It undermines them, whether people like it or not. And Nick Saban's point is, forget about all that. We have a game coming up. I have too much respect for the game itself and for the opponent and for the traditions of this game to say just because we're in a playoff berth, maybe guaranteed, we somehow need to approach this any differently than we do every time. It was an illuminating response for him. It gave me, the consumer, everything I needed, both the reporter and Nick Saban.
Couple of things. That's fine and good. But the reality is that there have been times in the past where Nick Saban has been quoted about how his players may have been feeling themselves a little bit, reading too many of the headlines, and as a result, didn't come in with the necessary focus they should have. He has said that in the past. Secondly, when the reporter is asking Nick Saban the question, he obviously ain't talking about Nick Saban, not just because of Nick Saban's commitment to excellence, but also because he ain't the one that's on the field. Those players are. So you're asking about kids on a college campus, and how are you going to maintain a level of focus upon them? It was a fair question. The only other thing that I would like to add is this. To those reporters out there in Alabama who I think do an outstanding job of covering this university and their team and whatever, keep doing your job, and just remember one thing. The questions that you ask are about what you know the fans and the public want to know. It ain't about appeasing Nick Saban. Is great and phenomenal as Nick Saban is. And there is no bigger fan of Nick Saban than me. At the same time, under no circumstances do you let that man intimidate you, because I watch him doing these press conferences and I get the impression that he intimidates a lot of damn people. And I'm saying to them, don't back
Ask your best question first. Note to self.
I will ask the questions when I want to answer. Don't tell, in other words, if you Nick Saban, I would have came back and said, excuse me, I'm asking it now. Don't tell me what to ask. You do your job, I'll do mine.
Even that, though, was illuminating. My advice would be, in an ideal world, I know this isn't the way it works for people's careers, because if you're seen as soft, you don't advance in your career in media the way others do. But my advice, would be, in an ideal world, what we should strive for is just getting the stuff you need.
That's it.
And by asking that question, Nick Saban's response, Molly, I think the reason he says you should have asked me that first is because it demonstrates how serious he is about his process. And in that response, he illuminates his thought process and his approach.
You're right. You're absolutely right. But what I'm saying...
So the reporter did his job. He got what he needed.
He did his job. He got what he needed. And that's fine. Saban's a boss. He could come across as a bully. It is what it is. I totally understand it. All I'm saying is that if you're a reporter, don't back up. By the way, always remember, let me give... I've only been a reporter for over 23 years. Let me say this. To the reporters out there, and they know this, I'm not telling them something they don't know. I don't know of any reporter who has had Thanksgiving dinner with an athlete or a coach or exchanged Christmas gifts. You understand? It don't matter. We be fair, be a human being, but understand they're going to go their merry way. You go yours. Do your thing.
Stephen A., when you retire, teach a class, don't back up.
Don't back up. Don't back up.
Coming up, you mentioned Bill Belichick and the Patriots. Let's get into them because the injury bug hit Rob Gronkowski yet again on Sunday. Are the great days of Gronk already behind us? That discussion is next. And the bad man shows up in Philly on Monday Night Football. We'll discuss if the Packers can make a late season run.
We may have already seen the best out of tight end Rob Gronkowski in his career.
This is not an overreaction for me. And kind of sad to say it because he's so fun to watch. The health is just, it's undeniable. It's the way he plays. It's like, and not only is it the way he plays, but it's also the way guys are forced to tackle him. I think the way he plays and how he has to be contacted now by defenders, it makes it impossible to be sustainable now.
That was Timmy Hasselbeck on NFL Live saying that Rob Gronkowski's best days are behind him after suffering a back injury in Sunday's win over the Jets. Herm Edwards just in that clip on NFL Live and now here with us. Good to see you as
Good
always.
to be back. Hadn't been here in a while. Happy holidays.
Always happy to have you.
Always
happy to have you. Doing great work. I'm watching you every Sunday night with Boomer. Keep it up, my man. I love it. It ain't too many people that can sit in that seat that Tom Jackson occupied for so many years. It's good to see you.
Got the right guy in it, though.
Absolutely, no question.
You think he's right?
I do. I think Gronk's best season was 2011. I mean, let's just be honest about what it is. That was his best season. That's a long time ago already. There are certain players, and I know, apologies to Tony Gonzalez. If I had to pick a tight end that I've seen with my own eyes to be on my all-time team, I want Gronkowski. But guys who are big and strong and have a rough and tumble style, I think Earl Campbell, for example, can be like the best player in the league for 3 or 4 years, but they generally don't have very long primes. It is a brutal, Coach, I don't have to tell you, sport that takes its toll. And Gronkowski's health has always been an issue. Last several years, how often are you not worried that Gronkowski is going to be compromised in some way heading into the playoffs? Because when he's not, they're a legit Super Bowl threat. I mean, they may win the Super Bowl. Right. And when he is, there's something less. I do agree. It's caught up with him. He'll still be excellent, not what he once was.
I agree with that. I just don't like what Tim Hasselbeck left out. He's right. The key point that he made was that it's a combination of the injuries, but more importantly, how you're forced to tackle him. Right? And that's the part that I peel from Tim Hasselbeck and what he said more than anything else. And when he said that statement, then it had me thinking about that damn NFL. This is all their fault. Because they're so fixated on avoiding the concussions, they've encouraged folks to hit low. And then I've seen guys cave a dude's chest in, but because the head snaps back, they're getting fined for it because, the guy ends up getting concussed because of how he falls on the turf or whatever the case may be. And so as a result, you're forcing guys to hit low because they don't want money coming out of their pockets because this ain't the NBA with the high 8 figures, 9 figures guaranteed salaries from time to time. So these guys trying to keep money in their pocket. So what are they doing? They're going after your knees. They're going after lower than that. And then you combine all of that with Gronk being about 6'6", about 250 plus or whatever the case may be, and you can't tackle him in the upper body and bring him down, you're forced to go low because the league itself has encouraged you to go low. Now, I would tell you this. if somehow, some way, I also look at Bill Belichick and some of the routes you got him running. Tom Brady throwing the ball high because height is to his advantage, makes him an easier target instead of throwing the ball a little bit low so he can go down a little bit, just a little bit and get it because it could save his legs a little bit. I'm sure Tom Brady's not doing that on purpose, but it is what it is. All of those things factor into the equation. But for my money, you talk about Gronk, listen, I'm a huge fan of Tony Gonzalez. By the way, he's doing a good job on CBS. I know my man is at the other network, but I love me some Shannon Sharp.
Yeah.
I love me some. Shannon Sharp could be my tight end any day of the week. And Coach, this is going to hit home for you, particularly where you live. You know where I'm going. I don't know too many tight ends in history that I loved more than I loved me some Kellen Winslow. When you talk about Kellen Winslow with Dan Fouts and Charlie Joyner, Chuck Muncie out of the backfield, I mean, you talking something special with that offense. So, I mean, Winslow, Sharp, Gonzalez, Gronk. Now, I might not know about the Dick because I wasn't right. I'm 49. Okay, I'm not 69. I ain't seen much of Mike Dick, all right? I mean, Jackie Smith, wasn't he the one that dropped the touchdown against the Steelers in the Super Bowl? Hit him right in the chest. But I don't know. Well, Jason Witten's going to be in there. Antonio Gates might be in there. But my top 4 tight ends, we talking Shannon Sharp. We talking Kellen Winslow, all right? We're talking Gonzalez. We're talking Gronk.
Yeah, you guys make great points, and I think a couple things just to add on to this. The evolution of the passing game has changed as well. I mean, when you think about the use of formations anymore and where quarterbacks are now willing to throw the football. It used to be the ball was thrown on the perimeter, outside the numbers, probably 70 to 80% of the time. That's no longer the case. The ball is thrown 70, 80% of the time now inside the numbers. And so this is where, for the most part, Gronk lives. He lives inside the numbers. He's a big catching tight end. Quarterbacks are more prone now to throw it inside to take advantage of the coverage you have inside. Safeties, linebackers trying to cover an athletic tight end. The matchup is in your favor. And Stephen A. Put it very well in the fact that the rules have changed, where guys have to go low to hit a guy like this. And the other thing about Gronk, when you watch him play, and you mentioned a bunch of good tight ends, he's a clumsy athlete. I call him a clumsy athlete. In other words, when he gets tackled, watch how he falls.
Falls hard.
Like it's almost like if you had a bag and you put a bag of bricks in one bag and you put marshmallows in the other bag and you dropped them, Gronk's the one with the bricks. It always hits hard. Where some guys, when they get tackled, it's the marshmallows. They just fall down. They just kind of fall and they get up. He falls hard. Every time he gets tackled, it's just...
That's true, but let me ask you this question, Coach. I get you. I totally understand that. You're absolutely right. But let me ask you this. The reason why I bring up the NFL, and Max, you too, we do so much, the league, meaning.
Yes.
You protect the quarterbacks.
Sure.
How about protecting your tight ends? How about protecting those offensive players if we're of the mindset, as much as we love the game of football, if we're of the mindset that offense sells, whereas you don't with baseball you want the long ball if you could help it. Where with basketball you don't want the hand check and you're not allowed to do it because you don't want to take so much away. You don't want the bad boy Pistons. You don't want the Rough Riders that was the New York Knicks with Anthony Mason, God rest his soul, and Ewing and Oakley and those boys. You want a more offensive flow. The Golden State Warriors are a dream come true for the NBA. How come the same isn't applicable in football overall, where we're talking about the quarterbacks being protected, but not necessarily all the offensive elite players?
Well, and to a sense there is, because according to how you hit a guy,
right,
all of a sudden it's a foul. I mean, we've seen guys get hit where when you're a defensive player now and you hit a guy and he's not aware of him getting ready to get hit, it's almost like they're gonna call a foul on me or not. So they're trying to do it, but it's still a contact sport.
Just like you mandate avoiding the head.
Yes.
I think you should mandate hitting above the knees, man.
Here's the problem. Here's what you're really addressing. This is not flag football. This is tackle football.
Right.
And the tackling comes from the defense. That's why it's tackle football. They're trying to stop you. They're trying to tackle you. And tackle football is brutal and has been, as has been brought up recently. If you tried to invent it today, it wouldn't take, because people would be like, that's too barbaric. You can't do that. So as time goes on and the health of the players, especially post-career, becomes a bigger and bigger issue, it will resemble less of the tackle football we now know. And I think people are going to have to get used to that idea, Coach, although I know old school guys like you aren't going to love it.
Well, we say that, but I still think we are a culture of competitive violence within the framework of the rules. Now, you're a big boxing guy, and you're one of them MMA guys. You watch those people fight?
No doubt about
And
it.
people want to watch that.
But you know what, Coach?
They want to watch that.
They do, but bring up boxing. Boxing has been increasingly marginalized through the years, partly because of its brutality.
Yeah.
And MMA, because of the way it's regulated, there have been fewer, and it's also a young sport, long-term kind of health problems associated with it. And I think that's one of the reasons, because as soon as you get an advantage, you can end the fight.
Sure.
That's one of the reasons it's a fast-growing sport.
Well, I will tell you this. I don't think you're the one to make the argument today because you go all the way out to Vegas and watch some dude, Axeman Nicholas Walters, quit because he wasn't feeling because he wasn't feeling well. I mean, you got to be kidding me.
He tapped out?
He tapped out, Coach. He said no more. He actually said no more. He actually said no more.
This is why MMA. This is why MMA is growing and boxing hasn't.
That's right.
One of the reasons. You can tap out in MMA. It's not the end of your career. You fight another day. Boxing, you tap out. People call you a quitter. They never forget it.
That's
they never
right.
forgive you.
And you're right, because I ain't going to forget Nicholas Walters.
The less brutal the sport is in the long run, the more growth potential.
When you kick a guy in the face with your foot, that's not.
Yeah, but if you hurt him, you get
I'm
on
just
him,
saying.
end of the fight.
So
It's
you
very
compare
physical.
that to football?
It's very physical.
just saying,
Edwards,
that's not
he never
Football
quit.
is prolonged violence.
Hey, your
Elvin.
sport is the one where they quit. That's what Nicholas Walters did.
We got to stay with this violent sport.
Can't do this.
All right.
Can't tap out.
Coming up. The major storylines regarding the Rams this season have been about what's going on the sidelines. Is it Jared Goff not playing? And now it has to do with the beef between Jeff Fisher and Eric Dickerson. Let me explain. In an interview with ESPN, Dickerson said that Fisher essentially told him he didn't want him on the sidelines during games because of some of his public comments that have made his players uncomfortable. Dickerson said, "I won't be at the Coliseum as long as Fisher is coaching. I'm a man of my word. And if I tell you something, I'm gonna do it." Fisher had this to say about Dickerson not feeling welcome. "I'd welcome him into the building. I'd love to have him come in. I'd love to have him come to practice. I'd love to have him come in the meetings." Max? I'm lost. Who do you believe?
I believe Eric Dickerson. Why would he make it up? And this doesn't make any sense. And then this is what the team underestimated. Yeah, you're the Rams. You're talking about the greatest player in your franchise's history who was a Los Angeles Ram. These guys just got here from St. Louis. So when the greatest Los Angeles Ram is sitting, what? He would just make it up? No, they underestimated his juice. They didn't think he would go public, it seems to me. Eric Dickerson said, "Oh, okay, this is how you treat me. This is what happened." And now the Rams are in spin mode. No, of course Eric Dickerson is welcome here.
It sounds a little sensitive to me.
Who are they to tell Eric Dickerson, because he justifiably criticizes a terrible team, not to be on the sidelines? Shame on them.
Well, I agree. I know Eric personally. Spent a little time in Los Angeles with the Rams. He was a teammate. He's a good man. And if he said something, he has a radio show, obviously. And if players are sensitive to that, that tells me something about this football team. In other words, when the media people after the game come into the locker room, the same people that write things about you, the same people on the radio, they come. That's okay, but Eric Dickerson can't stand on the sideline, a Hall of Famer, one of the best running backs to ever play the game of football because he said something negative about you. You can't go there. And Jeff can't win this battle. Jeff needs to stay out of it. I think he said what he said. He needed to say that. Welcome Eric back. Knowing Eric is not coming back. Because Eric's a man of his word. If he said I'm not coming back, if he's the coach, he's not coming back, okay? But this got out of control. It should never got to this point. If you're the head coach, one thing you don't listen to is players in the locker room. We talk about the media people. You got to deal with the media people. That's part of it. And you can't win that battle. When you go down that road as a coach, you're done. Go ahead. You got the floor.
Big Jeff Fisher fan, we know.
Go right ahead.
To me, y'all missing the point. Y'all missing the point. Let me look into the camera and say this. Congratulations to the Los Angeles Rams organization. You now have a great reason to get rid of Fisher right now. This man is horrible. Period. This is going on the 7th year. He is not going to have a winning record. This is his 22nd year in the NFL as a head coach. This man has made the playoffs 6 times. He has not had a winning record since 2008. Back then, Max, people actually joked I had as much hair as you. That's how long ago that was, that this man recorded a winning record. Not only do you get one contract after another, but then they relocate to Los Angeles from St. Louis to La La. Son, sunshine. Didn't Jeff Fisher go to USC? I think he did. So you back in home turf, home territory, Southern California, sunshine, Rodeo Drive, Venice Beach, palm trees. How in the hell did he pull this off? Gronky is the coach. Isn't he the owner of this team? Is it Gronky? He got pictures on this man or something. Something's up. He got something on this dude. How in the hell is Jeff Fisher still a coach of the Los Angeles Rams? And then knowing all of this, because he knew before this incident, he had a winning record since 2008. He knew before this incident he only had 6 playoff appearances. He knew his level of ineptitude was incredibly alarming, wasting away the career of Todd Gurley, Tavon Austin, got Case Keenum as your quarterback. When you drafted Jared Goff, you should have drafted Carson Wentz. We know all of this, but knowing all of that, you still turn around and talk smack to Eric Dickerson? And by the way, Eric Dickerson did not say he heard it from somebody else. He said, hold on. He did not say that he heard it from somebody else. He said Jeff Fisher said it directly to him. And Jeff Fisher initially tried to deny that. You can't make this up. This dude need to get the hell out of LA. Let me look at my man Bill Plaschke, one of the voices, the ultimate voices, Los Angeles Times. Bill Plaschke, one of the great columnists. You know, get this man out of town. Get this man. Marcellus Wilder, your radio host, dog. You a football player. You know what you're doing. Get this man out of town. You know, Scott McCarthy runs ESPN LA. Find a way. Get rid of him. Get rid of them. These people, I met these people for the Los Angeles Rams. These are good people. They got a lot of good people within that organization. Your coach, he's got to go. He's got to go. He's got to go. Fisher, bye. Please, Eric Dickerson's not coming back. Please, who the hell do you think you are? He got to go. He got to go, man.
Michael Jordan is not welcome in the sidelines of the Bulls.
What? I mean, please. You got to be kidding me. I just want to know. Listen, Don King says it all the time. Don King says it all the time, only in America. Jeff Fisher needs to adopt that mentality. How the hell is this man have a head coach job in the NFL? Coach, how? How is it, man? You been how long you been away for the game as a head coach?
Oh, 8 years.
Damn it, hire you, man. I mean, go back, man.
Yeah, good job.
Coach, no, ain't no job better than that. What kind? Listen, I want that job. That's security. You can be that and have to still keep a head coaching job. How? What has Fisher done to keep getting these contract extensions? He got pitches on the man and said, something wrong.
I think Eric's going to go back to the new stadium. When they have the new stadium, Eric's going to go back to that stadium.
Yeah.
He's waiting for the new stadium.
Yeah. You don't show up in LA and the first thing alienate Eric Dickerson
Eric
in the middle
is real.
of a terrible season.
I know Eric too. Eric's cool people, man. Eric's real. If he says something, he means it. He was offended by what this man said. And he's quoting him. Who do you think you are? I cannot believe
Just for the record, where do you stand on Jeff Fisher?
Yeah.
Clear.
We're trying to get Stephen
Is that almost like saying Kobe Bryant can't go to Laker games?
Right.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Jeter can't go to Yankee Stadium.
That's not good.
Cal Ripken can't go to Baltimore.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for bringing out the best out of my guy.
Jeff Fisher.
Yeah.
Get my pipe and some water.
Musa.
I don't know Jeff Fisher from a can of paint. I don't know the man. I've only met him a couple of times. All I'm saying to you is I'm addressing his record. If you have a guy like that in his position, what excuse is there to fire anybody else anywhere? Everybody else might as well keep their job no matter how inept they are. 22 years and 6 playoff appearances in 22 years, not a winning record. I ain't saying no playoffs. Not a winning record since 2008.
He has the second most career regular season
And by the
losses.
way, and this in the middle
in
of the
NFL
season where they
history.
traded all that to go up to draft
He has the second most regular season losses in NFL history.
The second most NFL losses in
163.
NFL history. And he just got a contract extension. You can't make this up. You can't. I want that job. Security.
We need you to calm
I
down
need security.
We need you to calm down.
How does this man have a job?
We'll see you again soon.
First Take is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
I feel like we can run the table. I really do. I think the offense is starting to click a little bit more. We just got to put together a game where we're consistent from the first snap to the last.
Rodgers takes the snap, throws the swank, got his man, end zone, touchdown, Davante Adams. You wanted a quick start, you got it. Rodgers backpedals, lost the left side of the end zone for Davante Adams, makes the catch, backside of the end zone, touchdown.
You can't throw the ball any better than that. He drops the ball in here to Davante Adams. That's amazing.
Aaron Rodgers said they had a chance to run the table leading up to last night's game. The winning streak is now at a total of 1, folks. With 5 games left, the Packers are at home against the Texans, Seahawks, at Bears, home against the Vikings, and finished with the Lions. So we asked you on Twitter, will the Packers run the table? The results are in. 76% say they will not. Mr. Smith?
I agree with that. I think they'll lose to either Seattle or Detroit. I can see them winning 4 of their next 5. They're going against 3 non-offensive teams as far as I'm concerned in Houston, Chicago, and Minnesota. But nevertheless, I don't see them running the table and winning it all. And plus, even if they did, that would give them 10 wins, and I don't know if that would be enough. So I don't see the Packers making the postseason.
I see at least 2 losses here, maybe even 3. I guess maybe they could go 4-1. They have a 7% chance, according to the analytics, according to the probability of running the table, but they have a 27% chance of making the playoffs. So they don't have to run the table to make the playoffs. Obviously, it would help. But I think 2 losses means they don't make the playoffs, not going to make it as a 500 team. So they got to play over their heads in order to make it, even with a loss.
Remember, Detroit just has to win 3 more games to get to 10 wins.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think they will.
Do they win the division?
Who?
The Packers.
No, I'm picking Detroit.
They're in third right now.
I think I'm picking Detroit to win the division. I'm saying the Packers are not going to win the division and not making the playoffs.
That said, Aaron Rodgers has been Superman before when they've needed it and has elevated them above where they should be. And it's not impossible he could do that again. Not the way I saw him play last night. That, to me, looked like Aaron Rodgers with the S on his chest.
That for Aaron Rodgers could win 4 of the next 5, but it would still have them at 9 and 7.
Yeah.
It's not going to be good enough.
Eagles
not going to be
done?
good enough. Yes, Eagles are done, Packers are done.
Yeah, I agree.
Put a fork in both
Well,
of them,
Eagles
gentlemen.
for sure. Packers are on life support.
Are the
Detroit's-
Rams
Detroit's-
done?
The Rams?
Yeah.
The Rams were done before the season started.
Do you have anything
How
else
do you
want
feel
to
about
add on
Jeff
that?
Fisher? That's what I'm unclear.
I just want you to open up.
When Jeff
Do you like
Fisher,
him or no?
when Jeff Fisher got the
Give him another
contract
chance?
extension, it doomed the Rams. They had the honeymoon period because it's their
I
first
think he
year.
wants
They
to
have
come
to
as
get
a
rid of
guest
him.
saying
spot.
wait and see
He
on Jeff
actually
Fisher?
wants you in the
No,
locker
wait
room.
and see. Get rid of him.
Oh, okay.
One more
Jeff
chance
Fisher
for
needs to go. No, one more chance.
Bye, guys.